Hello, greetings, and welcome everyone to another week review for the ASL. I think I've been saying season 10 like this entire time. Maybe I haven't, but season 11, week 6 review. I am SirMoth, and I'm joined by Brad.
I am.
And this has been a very interesting week. There have been a lot of maybe unexpected twists and uh, some some Pokemon that are like really shining out. A lot of games that have just been defined by one Pokemon in particular. But without further ado, we can get into match one, which was actually your match against Dirty Logic. And now throw all of that I just said about one-sided or one Pokemon defining it out of the window, because this was actually a really close match. It started off pretty good with you catching the Roserade with your Gothitelle set, which you said later was its entire job. So you managed to get rid of Roserade, and your Gothitelle went out the window in like the first 3-4 turns. And outside of that, pretty much after that, it was a whole lot of back and forth because your Tapu Koko was doing what Tapu Koko does, and it was volt switching around. It was putting on a lot of offensive pressure. It got beat down quite a bit by the opposing Togekiss, which was, according to you, more offensive than expected. And then, like, a Mamoswine came in to block it, and then Dirty Logic went for a hard prediction, maybe expecting a Latios to come in, went for a knockoff on Tapu Koko, didn't quite kill it from like 20% or something, and from there it was just so much back and forth. Durant comes in, and you have to find the Pokemon to come in and deal with that. Mamoswine comes in, you have to go into something. Your Tapu Koko comes in, it managed to get a kill on the Rotom Wash, I believe. And so just really back and forth. I could tell there were a lot of predictions going into every single turn this game.
Yeah, it was a tight match, and I'm really happy for Dirty Logic. I know he didn't get the result this week, but he played it the right way. And I think that's the message here, man, is the result may not always come, but if you play the game the right way, the result will come eventually. And that's really what has happened for my team this season. I was 0-3 at one point this season. I've now got the second longest winning streak in the league, and it's really the only reason I still have it is I just stayed the course in my prep and my play style. I'm just like, I know what works. This has historically worked for me for years and years. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and things are going to happen. And that's the same story for Dirty Logic. Even though he may be a newer player, he's doing the right things. His prep was good. He brought the exact perfect team. I was praying in my mind he maybe by some miracle he wouldn't bring Durant, which he did, and that he wouldn't bring Togekiss, which he did. And they both were quite annoying the entirety of the match, and he played really well. I'm really happy to see him. He may be 1-5, but he's not playing like a traditional 1-5 team. That was a high level match with a lot of really tough, really smart, think about it turns. It was not one of those things where I'll just click this and he'll just click that. I mean, it was a long, drawn out. Yeah, I mean, I would have hated to be a bystander watching this match live. It was a long match for only what 30. I mean, it wasn't a whole lot of turns. A 30-turn match. It easily took us an hour plus for this 30-turn match. Um, it was a brawl, but at the end of the day, Latios is super stinking good, man.
Yep.
Um, if you just came in and you just looked at my team, didn't look at anything else, I got a Charizard Y, I've got a Tapu Koko. Latios is, I think, 5 or 6 on the kill leader, man. Latios is rolling for me. And it showed itself really well this week. And Charizard X, I've said it before, I've said it in several videos of ours, my least favorite Mon in the draft league format to have to face. Quite frankly, this matchup was my least favorite matchup to have to deal with of the entire season. I hate facing Charizard X. I really don't have a ton on my team to deal with it other than just one Mon. Um, It was a tough match, honestly, and I'm really happy to pull away with a 2-0. It feels like a 5-0 to me. Like just getting this win against a Mon that I hate, that I notoriously have bad luck with. It was a good one for me to pull away with.
Yeah, and I can say that as a spectator, sure the matches did or the turns did individually take a long time for everyone, but it was such an intense match that I actually enjoyed watching it just because I was able to do that thinking, "Oh, is Dirty Logic going to click this? Is Brad going to click this? What's going to happen?" Because every single turn was a turning point. And also, one little tip that I'll give to Dirty Logic, I said it before. I don't remember quite what the opponent was, but they had the Corviknight. Whichever player has the Corviknight.
Lily.
Yeah, it was Dirty Logic versus Lille, and every time that the Durant came in, it looked like the Corviknight was the dedicated switch in, and so Durant just kept clicking that first impression. And something kind of similar was happening here with your Scrafty always coming in on it and chipping it down with its own life orb damage. I do think that one thing to keep in mind when you're using something like Durant, with that high priority first impression, if like a lot of times it would be your Tapu Koko in on only a couple percent, and so there's not much reason for your opponent to stay in if that Pokemon still has use. So you can take that opportunity, know they have a dedicated switch in, and make a double right there, go into maybe the Rotom Wash or into the Togekiss on the expected Scrafty. And I won't say that those were misplays by any means, because like we've been saying, every single turn was important. But that's just one little thing that maybe you could incorporate into your gameplay with this team in particular.
Yeah, and I mean he did. There was actually a point in time where he tried to break the cycle, where he could have, or in that one matchup where he had historically been swapping Durant out directly. There's one turn that he made the choice to stay in. And I actually predicted that that would be the exact turn where he tried to break the cycle. So I also stayed in and got off some key damage on the Durant that really played in my favor. But it was a tough game, and I made a ton of predictions. I mean, I made it a ridiculous. There's 29 turns. I probably made 9 game-changing predictions where if I got it wrong, I was going to lose. So I played a really aggressive play style, which is, I'm going to say, probably not the norm. It's probably not what he's going to face every week. But I thought he played really well, even despite that, and pushed it right to the edge.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on to match 2 was Sarl versus IL Kid. And this was one of the IL Kid's had a strange season, to be honest with you. I'm going to say this is probably his 3rd match where just weird stuff keeps happening. And I don't know if maybe he's just having some bad luck. I don't know if maybe he's prepping sets that, allow for extra turns where weird things can happen. I don't really have an answer, but it's starting to happen often enough where I'm wondering, if maybe there's something he can do in his preps to avoid some of the weirdness that keeps happening. I'm not really sure that he can. I'm not sure. I just think weird things keep happening. So in this particular match, he's playing Sorrel, and he's really, quite frankly, he's dunking on her. It's pretty brutal around turn 4 or 5. He's pretty squarely got all the momentum you could possibly ask for. And it's not until Volcarona gets a crit on the Miltank and kills it. I mean, she's losing pretty squarely up until around turn 15 or so. And then all of a sudden, we're in a brawl to the death. It ends up being a 1-0, whereas in the early stages of the game, it looked like it may be a 6-0 for IL Kids side. So, good on Sorrel to stay the course. The game's going to happen the way the game's going to happen. If you start making dumb plays or just trying to get out there quickly, this would not have been a 1-0. So credit to her for staying the course and doing the right things. But man, IL Kid, he's just having a weird season. I don't know if you got any thoughts on what's going on with him this season.
Yeah, I'm not completely sure. I will mention one thing. There was a point where Sorrel had Mega Blastoise in, and 2 turns in a row forgot to click Mega on it, and that cost it a kill on Appleton, and probably quite possibly 1 or 2 kills after that, which was pretty big. So I won't begin to question what would have happened, but yeah, as far as IL Kid's luck goes, I don't know. I mean, last week there was that Hurricane miss, which is obviously a prep thing. You chose to do Hurricane instead of Air Slash, but other than that, I don't know that there's anything that could change. It's just cross fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah, sometimes play style is a beckoner of extra hacks. What I mean by that is if you're pulling out 60 turn matches, 70 turn matches, crazy stuff's going to happen in your matches because those 10% are coming up a whole bunch in a 70 turn match. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
His matches aren't necessarily going that way. I'm not sure that there's things that he can necessarily do to avoid some of the shenanigans that are coming up. If he tries to push a much heavier offensive pace, he may get out of the realm of what his team is comfortable with doing. So I don't know that he has an answer, but he has had a lot of strange things happening in his matches. And maybe he's just not paying the right people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe he just needs to talk to the server people and just be like, it's me, 5%, but I don't know. I don't know. But it seems to keep happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I hadn't really thought of. I mean, I know it's been popping up over and over again, but I hadn't really clicked, oh, this is happening to IL Kid every time.
I think this is his 3rd match where there was some pretty game-altering shenanigans. I believe he had an Appleton that got frozen.
Yeah.
He had the Hurricane Confusion hit yourself thing last week. Man. But, nevertheless, he played it well enough to win this week, as opposed to last week where I think the server got the better of him. He stayed the course and got the win, so good for him. And I don't know that I have an answer. Maybe I would say this. If you're going to have bad luck in a season, and I think everyone's going to have bad luck in a season, get it out in the first half, right?
Yeah.
Get it. Just if I'm going to have, say 20 turns of bad luck, let's have those 20 turns in the first 6 weeks and not in the last 5 weeks. So maybe that's what it is. Who knows?
Yeah, no guarantees, but usually these things tend to even out, so it'll probably start going well. So match number 3, this one was Altaria Motives, Ian, versus Lille, and this was going back to the trend of just absolutely explosive turns from Ian for the first few turns. And what happened the first few turns, I really want to highlight that in particular because I feel like that really defined the momentum from that point on. So, first turn, it's Landorus Therian versus Inteleon. Inteleon, we know from later talks, was Specs. Tornadus clicks Nasty Plot. Inteleon gets off 90% with Ice Beam. Tornadus then clicks Grass Knot and deals 98% to Inteleon, which then allows Inteleon to finish off the Tornadus. And I find those particular events really intriguing, not necessarily because of how explosive they were, but because I did calculations later. And in order for Inteleon to not KO with Ice Beam, it either had to not be Timid Max Attack, or max special attack, or Tornadus had to have at least 200 points in hit points. And then conversely, for Tornadus Therian to not kill it +2 with the Grass Knot, Inteleon had to be running at least 200 points in hit points, or Tornadus not running much attack. So both of those calculations were really weird, and maybe there was some unexpected bulk going on one side or both sides. But from there, I believe Type Null came in a few times, and the Corviknight was just expertly designed to deal with that. Rocky Helmet and Mirror Armor, so if the Type Null used Crushing Claw, it would lower its own defense, take a lot of damage. Turtonator came in and clicked Shell Smash at one point, got a kill on the Piloswine, but Mew was able to outspeed. Even after the Turtonator got 2 Shell Smashes, Mew only needed 1 Dragon Dance to outspeed. And from there, Morpeko just got in a position and took off with Choice Band.
This was when I'm working with new coaches or maybe developing coaches, what I generally tell them is this: unless you know an opponent extremely well, I don't like making predictions in the first couple of turns. I think it's best to play it safe, data mine, get as much information as you can, calc every turn. Calc a U-turn that does 4% and look and see what it tells you. You know what I mean? Gather every single piece of information and put that together so by mid-game, you are well equipped to start making smart decisions that are going to lead to your victory. And Ian takes that advice and chunks out the window week after week after week of just like these massive 70, 80, 90% chunks in like turns 1, 2, and 3. And sometimes they play his way, and sometimes they don't play his way. And I just think in this particular match, he clicked the Nasty Plot, then he clicked the Grass Knot. Maybe if he clicked Grass Knot turn 1, then he could have, maybe U-turned or swapped out, preserve that Torrentee. And we all know what Torrentee does. There's a reason Torrentee is a first-round draft pick. Versely in this meta, because it gets that regenerator up and get off big hits. He didn't have to lose his Torrentee. That's what I'm trying to say? Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely.
No, and I get that that's his playstyle. That's what he's continuing to do. I thought Torrentee had a really nice matchup this week, and donating it to hopefully get off big damage, which it should have worked out, but should have doesn't always meet did, because weird things happen. So it's not a bad call. It's just my preference, but I think it hurt him this week. The other thing that out to me is you get Mew in on the Turtonator. Mew makes the choice to Dragon Dance that very first turn that Mew's on the field, and Ian clicks Shell Smash. Man, a big dragon move or a fire move probably would have took a huge chunk out of Mew right there, as opposed to Shell Smashing again and then dying. Basically, you allowed Mew a free +1 for nothing. It gained full health. Now it's got a boost, and you're dead.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that was a fairly high risk, high reward. If the Mew hadn't had a speed boosting move, I doubt it could have taken out the Turtonator without a boost. So in theory, at that point when you're already behind a little, maybe you do need to make those risky plays, like going for a second Shell Smash that could have just, looking at the team, taken the game there.
Have, but that being said, we've seen Dragon Dance Mew a lot this season for Melone. That's not the first time he's used it. It's been fairly common, and the odds are is that Mew's just going to go ahead and finish Turtonator off, since it probably could with most attacks from that point. So I don't know. I thought that was a misplay personally. I'm not saying he didn't have other options, and but I personally didn't. I didn't think that was a solid move. But once little Morpeko hit the field, life got real hard real fast. And we were talking about this in chat. Morpeko's a kind of a strange mon in that getting it in is hard. Clicking the first move is hard. everything after that gets real easy real fast. But
Yeah.
it has great coverage with like Psychic Fangs. It gets Seed Bomb for some reason I can't figure out. A lot of moves that it wants to click besides Aura Wheel. Um, but if you can be in a situation where clicking Aura Wheel is advantageous for you, that little thing gets really painful really quickly. And certainly showed its value and well worth a roster spot with a 4-0 sweep this week. Very impressive.
Yeah, I was certainly impressed because Morpeko, like you said, hard to get in, hard to click that first move. It's certainly not the type of Pokemon that I'm ever going to put anywhere within 10 feet of any of my draft plans. I'm just never using it. But that being said, it can be used really effectively. When it works, and Lille really brought out its potential.
Yeah, he did, and he played extremely well. Something that's just as a fan, I'm going to go ahead and make my complaint here and let it known. Like, Mega Altaria didn't even have to Mega Evolve this match. And I hate that because I love Mega Altaria. I want to see more Mega Altaria. Put it on the field of play and let it do some work because I love that mon. So seeing it come, but not seeing it work, a little bit of temptation danced in front of me for no results. Just as a fan, I want to see that mon put in some work every week.
Yeah, well, I'm sure Lille will be coming next week bringing that Mega Altaria and doing some work, or maybe it won't, in which case, I guess you'll just have to suck it up.
I hope to see it come, but you know what? I got after Peach for a little while, and then we got to see a really nice Diancie game. So maybe the streak will continue, and we can see a really nice Altaria game next week. But moving forward on to the next match, we have an interesting match, right? We had your match versus Peach. Coming into the week, it's a big match for both. I think both guys needed the W. Playoff race is tight this year for those that don't know. I think the 10th ranked team in the standings is one game out of playoffs. Actually, I think they're one game out of fifth place. No, excuse me. The second ranked team only has 4 wins, and the 10th ranked team has 3 wins. So you're one win away from potentially being in the third ranked spot. Standings are tight, is what I'm trying to say. So this
Yeah.
was a big match for both guys. It didn't look like that in the game. It was a very one-sided game. Swapped in and took a flash cannon to the face and died. To which Peach's exact words were "Yikes," because I think we all knew at that point that that's a problem.
Yeah, and you cut out for just a second, so go ahead and repeat what you just said happened.
Well, I'm just saying that losing the Yancey at turn 5.
Hmm.
He's got the Kiram. He's got the Yanmega. That's the total of his offense that's left without the Deontay. So it's not that he lost a Mon early, but he lost a key featured central Mon for this matchup. And I think it played true because he had a little bit of trouble getting rid of things. He had trouble breaking through some of the sets that you brought. I think that maybe he would have had an easier time if he had the Deontay. We'll certainly never know because he didn't, unless we see a rematch in playoffs potentially. But it was a very decisive victory. Ended up being a 6-0. We got to see Belly Drum Polyrath come and get a Drain Punch off, do a couple of things. The Yanmega threatened. I
Yes.
believe he got a weakness policy endure speed boost set that got a little bit tricky. And had it have flinched Lando T, I think it probably just cleans from that point.
Yeah, 100%. If that was a flinch, I lost right there.
Yeah. So he put himself in a position where a little bit of hacks maybe could have made it happen, but I think probably fair play that it didn't. You'd rather win cleanly than win off of something like that. But Fair play to Peach. It was a 6-0 with the young mega play. I guess it could have been closer. But losing that DNC turn 3 really was the story of the game in my book.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I was incredibly terrified of the Mega DNC, and I actually talked to you before the match, like a couple hours before the match, and I brought a team to you that didn't have Poliwrath, and it did have Mandibuzz, and I was like, this team just feels like it's wrong. And so you basically said, well, you can't really outspeed Mega DNC, and there are a couple other threats you mentioned, and I was like, okay, I'll bring the Poliwrath. And so I have the Poliwrath, which was Belly Drum, Salac Berry to outspeed Mega DNC. I actually brought Thunderwave on Victini specifically to hit it on a switch in, because even though it has Magic Bounce in its Mega form, if I could hit it on that switch, lowering its speed that way would be good. And then the Electros, I mean, that's the one that worked out, and that worked out better than any of them could have. So that was pretty much, I think if the DNC didn't go down, I had a really good shot of losing. And then apparently if there was just any chip on my Landorus Therian, I would have lost anyway because of that awesome Yen Mega set. But I thought it was despite the way it looks, I don't think that it was nearly as one-sided as it could have been.
No, as a spectator, I think the game probably would have been more enjoyable to me if DNC would have lived. Even if it had maybe taken a T-Wave or something like that, as a spectator, I think we would have seen a much closer match if DNC had been present for the entirety of the game. But what we did get as a spectator was a 3-0 from an E-tier, which is never a bad day.
Yeah.
You can't be upset about a 3-0 from an E-tier. So,
yeah. And I'll be honest, I can't be upset about a 6-0 any day.
I mean, it's a nice thing to have. It certainly helps your differential. From the standpoint of, a spectator who's looking for high quality games, 6-0s aren't my favorite thing to see.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
6-0s, you want to talk about match 5?
Yeah, so match 5, this was TCP versus Shadow, and I wonder if there's maybe... It looks like there might be one kill missing. Have to go back into stats later. But this match was also very interesting because I think the big thing that happened, well, just from the beginning, TCP brought some hard hitters. Dracozolt came in, and doesn't matter if Boltbeak is resisted, took a huge chunk from Boltund. It managed to come in later and flamethrower down a Kartana. And the big one, Specs Corsola, came, and it actually got a crit on Milotic pretty early that put it within its own burn range and took that out really early. I won't begin to anticipate what could have happened if that crit didn't happen, but once that Milotic was gone, it looked like there was really nothing to deal with Gliscor, and so Gliscor just came in and walled everything, dealt a lot of damage. One thing I will note, the Wheezing was actually neutralizing gas, which I've run Wheezing a whole lot of times, both forms, and I've run it against Gliscor a lot. And neutralizing gas against Gliscor is actually really interesting because even though the Gliscor has Toxic Heal, or Poison Heal, that toxic damage is still stacking up in the background. So if you can bring in a Wheezing after the Gliscor has been in quite a while, it may take an unanticipated 50% or so from its own toxic damage. That didn't happen, but it's a cool set that maybe could have been used, but other than that, it looked like Gliscor just hardwalled everything.
Just to follow up on your original comment, the reason that TCP only has 5 kills is because Milotic died to its own burn damage.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not a calculation error, it just is the way that game played out. But yeah, Shadow was on, I think, a 2-game win streak coming into this game. And had the featured match of the week last week, if I'm not mistaken, or was the week before that? I don't recall, but he had a featured match not too long ago in a victory. Um, just got shellacked this week. So I'm not sure what changed, or maybe just TCP played really well and held momentum from front end to back end. Um, there really wasn't a point, whereas in your game, there were a couple of points where maybe if it had gone differently on this turn or that turn, that maybe your game versus Peach would have been closer. I don't think that there's any one turn necessarily that would have made this match closer. The melodic living would have helped. Would have helped with the Glyph score, but also really would have helped with a Moltres. And Shadow had absolutely no answer for Moltres, certainly defensively, without the melodic. So I don't know, but this was pretty much a one-sided beatdown, and I hate that. Shad's been playing extremely well the last couple of weeks. He does drop to 2-4. I think there's a very real odds that he could improve that, get to 3-4 next week. He's been playing great, so more of the bump in the road maybe, um, but not a great showing. And TCP, credit to him, he's been playing extremely well this season, to no one's surprise at all. And he got a win, so great. That's great for him. His record's looking good. He's probably, I'm going to say, 2 to 3 wins away from securing his playoff spot, which is, that's the whole point of the regular season, right? That's the goal. And so he's getting closer and closer to that. So good on him. Rough day for Shadow, for sure, though.
Yeah, for sure. And, of course, obligatory mention, Klefki still hasn't been dethroned yet. Can't wait for that to happen, honestly. But that's neither here nor there.
Neither here nor there. But what is right here and right now is our third 6-0 in a row.
Yep, indeed it is.
So, and just to speak to that point, and this is something that Moth and I've talked about in the background, not necessarily in the videos, but I believe I have mentioned it in one video, maybe week 4. But we're getting into, they call it the dog days of summer. We're getting into the tough weeks of the season. You get into a lull here. Our season is crazy long, 13-week regular season. In the first 3 to 4 weeks are usually high intensity by everyone. The last, I'm going to say 3 to 4 weeks, is high intensity by the teams that have a chance. But you do see a drop off in intensity in teams, in these middling weeks where it's really give or take. If you lose week 7, is it the biggest deal in the world? Probably not. There's still a lot of time left to make it up. You had a lot of time before that where hopefully you put yourself in a good position. So I think sometimes you see a lull in certain weeks. And I think this week there were some matches that were clear. It was pretty evident in Ian's match, particularly in Shadow's match, where it was very one-sided. Now this match, I don't know if that's the case. I'm not saying that to preface this match. I'm just saying that in general, because there were 3 6-0s and a 5-0 this week, and that may have been why there was some decisive battles. But this particular match, I don't think that was the case. I think what happened in this match is Static just doesn't know what a Zygarde 50 does, or had forgotten it coming into the match. Maybe he just looked at Dragos' roster and just skipped the Zygarde 50. Because Zygarde 50, one of its primary sets is a coil set. It loves running coil because it's a bulky dude to begin with. It clicked coil around turn 3, and it never stopped. It just hammered away until it finished the sweep at turn 17. So good on Dravos for having a high quality Zygarde set, although maybe not the most inventive set. That's what Zygardes do. And Static really just did not have a way to deal with it. Maybe an Uxie with an Ice Beam. It was just getting drummed from turn 3 onwards. So if we were going to do a feature set of the week, we certainly would have done Zygarde for a beautiful, clean 6-0 sweep. But I'm not sure. Credit to Dragos for the sweep, but also shame on Static. He should have been more prepared for what really isn't a brand new concept. This is kind of the old hat for what Zygarde likes to do.
Yeah, and there was there was a little slip up. Static didn't know that Ditto's imposter and transform didn't work if the Pokemon was behind a sub. Honestly, I don't think it changed anything because a Scarf Zygarde isn't going to be beating a Zygarde that can still coil in front of it. But yeah, I think I have to agree. Like there was the Araquanid which brought Ice Beam, which was likely for Zygarde, but it wasn't for a sub coil Zygarde. So it was really just a case of the special attackers couldn't deal with sub, physical attackers couldn't deal with it. So there it
And
was.
maybe if he had a Charty Berry that would have reduced that Stone Edge damage the first turn, and he could have forced it out. Then you get into chip switch ins, and maybe something could have happened that way. But I wonder what this match would have looked like if we saw a Fizz Def Uxie with Ice Beam. How much would that have changed the game?
Yeah, it
I don't know.
probably would have done something.
I don't know what that would have looked like. You can tell Dravo's good on him for having a Zygarde set that's ready for Ditto. He had the substitute. He also, I believe, did not have a Dragon type move, so he couldn't be reverse swept by a Zygarde. Um, he had a good set, and it kicked Static's teeth in, quite frankly.
Yeah, it really did. So, on to our featured match this week. We have Melone versus Brett, and this is an exciting time because just last week we were pumping Melone up. You may be 0-5 at this point, but you've still got it in you. You're making plays. You can get that win, and by God, he did. This week it was Brett brought a whole bunch of Volt Turn and Melone. This whole thing was really a big story of can Brett take down the Lickilicky, which there were two Pokemon that could do it, Braviary and Infernape, and nothing else could. And Melone happened to make a lot of the predictions, a lot of the switches that were necessary to keep that Lickilicky alive, and the Dragapult, the Vikavolt, the Ferrothorn, and the Greninja, none of them could touch it. So overall, I will comment on a few specific turns before I hand it over. The Braviary did have Expert Belt close combat, and there were quite a few turns where that could have been clicked when Lickilicky was on maybe 60-70% or so, and it would have gotten the kill. I think I counted 3 specific turns where that could have happened. But instead it was a lot of tailwinding and U-turning, which was getting a lot of momentum, but without that Lickilicky going down, finally the Braviary did click close combat, but it was when Lickilicky was on 90%, it survived the hit, and yeah, from there it's just Lickilicky Toxic stalled everything.
It was, I like. There's part of me that wanted to say like Malone got his first win, so it's gotta be featured match of the week. But that's honestly not what happened here. This was a show. I mean, this was a performance on both sides. The moment this battle ended, I think before it ended, we had messaged each other and was like, "This is the featured game of the week." It was played really well on
Yeah,
both sides, I thought. And I don't know. I didn't count it exactly. Tell you what the count was, but the number of momentum moves that Brett had clicked in the battle, I think, was around 15.
it
Um,
it had to be almost half of the turns. It was insane.
if I remember correctly, it was somewhere like 13, 14, 15, either U-turn or volt switch. And that's great. That's exciting. That's what you want. You want a lot. You have a team like Brett's where you have an Infernape, you have a Greninja, you've got the Vikavolt, you've got now Braviary on there. you want to see just a ton of momentum, and he clicked a ton of momentum, which meant he was always in advantageous positions in terms of the matchup. But Melone, it just didn't matter. He just kept coming and kept battling back and kept putting himself in a good position. And like you said, Licky Licky, if Licky Licky is a contender at the end of the season in voting for like defensive mon of the year, this is its replay. Like it's gonna bring this replay
Mm-hmm.
to the campaign front. Just be like, just watch this, then let me know why anything else should get your vote. Because it just Licky Licky got 4 kills and it wasn't an offensive set. It wasn't an SD set. It was just an annoying like try to get rid of me set. It
Yeah.
was a baller matchup, man. Honestly, it was. This was not one of those again. I think we said this the other week in one of Shadow's matches. This was not a match where there was 70 misplays or there was 5 turns where I thought, God, that was pretty stupid. I didn't feel that way. I felt like it was a high level match where both dudes were making a lot of good calls. There were chances, I agree, where Brett could have nuked that Licky Licky, but also I understood why he didn't. I
Oh
understood
yeah.
why he stuck to the U-turn, stuck to the momentum plays, because Malone should have been swapping out his Licky Licky on a lot of those turns. Malone should not have been staying in because without Licky Licky, he's going to get just drummed by that Dragapult. So Malone actually rolled the dice a bunch on Licky Licky. And I don't know if that was a good play or not, but it certainly seemed to work out for him because at any point he could have gotten nuked by that Braviary, but he didn't. And it just kept working. And I understand both sides of it. Like, I really do. It was a high level match. There was a lot of fun turns. It was one of those, just as a viewer, especially this week when you saw 3-6-0s and a 5-0, to get a match like this where it's tight. It may be a 3-0, but it was much tighter than that. Um, this was a lot of fun.
Yeah, what I found really impressive, I mean, obviously this wasn't technically the case, but this was certainly a match that it felt like Malone was behind on every single turn just because of all of Brett's momentum. There weren't many places where it's like, oh yeah, Malone looks like he's got the advantage here. He's gonna start going off. I mean, towards the end, once the sticky webs came up and Dracovic came out, sure, but for a lot of it, it really looked like Brett was in the lead. It's just slowly but surely that Licky Licky was getting the work done that it needed to get done. And yeah, I agree. I was saying earlier that I was pointing out the places where Brett could have done things differently. And in hindsight, it's really easy to do that. But I do agree that Brett was playing very well throughout a lot of this game, and so was Malone.
That being said, though, don't want to diminish your point from earlier in that, really what's the point of momentum, right? The point of momentum is to get your big hitters in and click big moves. That's the point of momentum. People don't run momentum. Well, I suppose some people run momentum just to get from one wall to the next wall, but we hate those people. We're not going to talk about those people.
Yeah, and Brett's certainly not one with this team that he brought.
But those people, quite frankly, don't need to play here. That's not what we try to do in this league. I'm not having 200 turns. That's just not going to happen. Meant to get you into a set that's going to do work. And so there were turns where I thought that Brett got into a set that he needed to and just clicked U-turn again. And I get that because he's constantly pursuing that right matchup, that right set. But there were a few turns, particularly where Infernape was in, and I thought Infernape was that quote unquote right mon, where maybe he could have clicked a Flare Blitz, but instead clicked the U turn. He didn't get the big chip he was hoping for. And I don't know what the answer to that is. If you were to ask me what's going on, I would say it's probably a rust factor. Brett's took a couple of seasons off. This is his first season back. These are things that I've seen him do right in the past that maybe he skipped on opportunities. I'm not going to say he misplayed because I don't think he did in this particular match because he was constantly pursuing the perfect, set of circumstances. And he did click moves sometimes that caused big impact damages. But I mean, you got to remember the point and the purpose of momentum, right? I mean, why is teleport Slowbro such a thing? Because you can't kill Slowbro, and it's going to constantly get you into mons that click big moves. And Brett wasn't clicking big moves, but I get it because he's still pursuing that perfect matchup. But there is a thing such as, too much, right? You need to have balance. And so probably there were 3 or 4 turns where he could have clicked big damage that didn't. And I think it played a factor in the end, at least in the end differential. Maybe not in the end outcome, but at
Yeah.
least in the differential.
Yeah, and specifically in those turns where Dusk Noir, which would have been the obvious switch into a close combat, had already been burnt, so it wasn't much of a threat to the Braviary. So there were some cases where even if Melone did do the expected switch, it wouldn't have necessarily put Brett behind much, if at all. But
I'll also say on Malone's side too, how annoying is it to have your Dust Noir burned by a Dragapult?
oh yeah, man, that that looked frustrating. It was frustrating even from the outside. It's like, oh man, Dusk Noir is in. It's gonna take on this Dragapult. I mean, it was probably one of the expected counters. It was bringing Ice Punch and stuff like that, and then just burn and well,
I
there goes
mean,
that.
the Dust Noir on paper is a awesome switch into Braviary. It's an awesome switch into Infernape. It's got the coverage to be able to hit like the Dragapult if it swaps in. And then it just gets burned and now it just becomes mediocre chip the rest of the match. That's just extremely frustrating. It's got to be anyway, at least, I would imagine.
Yeah, and another question that I want to bring up, and this isn't like pointing out a misplay or anything like that. And I have brought up questions in the past in these videos where, and you have too, where it's like, why was Grimmsnarl clicking sub protect? Why was that Cradilly not countering the Milotic that it's supposed to be countering? And then people have come back and said, oh, the Cradilly was actually countering the Conkeldurr,
Sure.
or I was expecting this. So I guess my question in this case, I'm curious why the Ferrothorn never came in against the Dracovish. Because on paper, a Dracovish clicking Fishes Rend, I mean, the Ferrothorn didn't hit the field until like the very end. So maybe it was a set that couldn't. I can't imagine it was a set that couldn't take on Dracovish. So that in particular perplexed me a little bit. But
That's a fair point. Fair point. I mean, really, this game was the story of Licky Licky. I mean that's the beginning, end, and the middle of this match is it's all about the big tongue Licky Licky.
yeah. All right. Well, we don't have any transactions or anything else to do this week, so I guess
I
if
do want
you
to say, let's talk about very quickly week 7. If you're not in server for whatever reason, there's a link in the description of this video. Hop in the Discord server. This weekend in particular is a special weekend for our league. Those that don't know or aren't accustomed to it, we have a holiday in our league every season. I don't think this is normal for leagues. It's something we've been doing forever. It's called the Commissioner Bowl. It's not. It's when Ian and I battle. Um, Ian and I are the founders of this league, and it is usually a big event. I don't know that this year will be maybe as big as some because I haven't had time to prep for it, but I will throw something together. We will have a Commissioner Bowl this Saturday. Don't know the times yet, but there will be events throughout the day. We'll have an opportunity to earn custom server emotes, potentially a free agent bonus transaction, usually one of the big lures for a big tournament where if you win and you're a competing coach, you can get a bonus free agent move. There's a lot of things at stake. We've had games, we've had past bowl days where we've given away Amazon gift cards. A copy of Sword and Shield was given away one season. There's a lot of fun things that we do there, all culminating in Ian and I battling, and usually me beating Ian's teeth in. That's going to happen again this season. I hope you're listening, Ian. Let me know why it's going to be different. I'm going to beat you again. And I can't wait for it. It's my favorite game of the season. It's the only game of the season that matters to me. I don't care if I win league. I don't care if I win a title. This is the match that matters. This is the only match that matters. If I go 1-12, but I beat Ian, I had a good season. Trust me on that. Here we go. 7. Going to be a showdown. He's got a crazy good team. He had the highest ranked draft. I'm going to find a way, and we're going to see if I can take him out. That big win this weekend. Very excited about it. This is the week for me. I don't care about any other matchup or any other coach or any other thing. This is the week.
Yeah, I am certainly looking forward to it as a newcomer myself. I don't really know what to expect, so this is going to be exciting.
It's a big one. We usually do a catch and evolve tournament. We do maybe a randoms tournament, Battle Factory. We'll do some games throughout the day. There'll be events. There'll be a calendar of events posted where you can see what the schedule looks like. It should be a good day for people to be active, have some fun, get involved. Just a lot of fun usually.
Yeah. Well, with that, if there isn't anything else, this has been another great week in ASL, and next week is apparently going to be a fantastic week. So, if you've listened up to this point, I'm going to go ahead and copy what you did last week. Go ahead and say, let's go with Brad sucks. So,
I agree.
If you say Brad sucks in the comments, you don't get anything, but we know how dedicated you are, and maybe you get some of that clout. So
I agree with this. I think it's a good idea. Say it twice.
Yeah, Brad sucks, Brad sucks. Anyway, man. I will hand the rest of it off to you to do the sign out.
Week 7 is going to be a big one. If you miss it, you really don't know what's going on, man. It's going to be a big week, going to be a big breakdown. And you know what? Who knows? We may have a guest in our next weekly recap. We may see if I can pull someone in here to talk about this big match between me and Ian coming out at the end of the week. So look forward to it, and we'll see you then.
See you then.